Okay, here's the Daisy 717. I also have the 747. I have both of these pistols. I'm going to leave links in the description for other videos on these because of the fact there's so much detail that you need to know. The only limitations of these target pistols are your eyes. So I wanted to show you what kind of groups I'm getting with my eyes, 10-shot groupings, and a couple other shots that I did. So what I typically do is I start out with an aim point, and the front notch on the pistol at 25 yards is about this wide. So I use this for my aim point, and we're looking at about 6 inches wide. So a 6-inch square at 25 yards is exactly the same size as the front sight on here. So what I did is I put the front sight under here to give me reference so that I could hold straight. And this was done with a pistol rest on a table. So the way it looked is I would place the black thing right here, this black piece of tape. I would tape that, but not entirely to the whole sheet of paper. And then I would remove it and then move it to the next target, next target, next target. So when I shot, what I typically did is I made sure that the shots were falling a little bit low, so that way it wouldn't hit this. And the elevation on this one wasn't all the way up because this is only 25 yards. But I want to show you some of the groups here that I was getting. Now remember, these are 10-shot groups here at 25 yards. These aren't just 3 nice little pretty shots that you could get, you know, some amazing groups with sometimes, just 3 shots, but this is 10 shots. So the first pellet here, this was done after kind of a clean barrel. I just pretty much put a mop down the barrel. I didn't scrub it out or anything like that. I just cleaned in between each different types of pellets. So here's the 6.48 grain. This is an alloy pellet, H&N, and this is the Barracuda type. And for 10 shots, 80% was 2 1/4 inches, and 100% of the shots were 3 inches. So there's that one. The next one is the 7.33 grain JSB wad cutter. 80% of the shots were 2 inches. 100% of the shots were 3 inches. The next one was a 7.33 round nose. This is an Air Arms Falcon pellet. 80%, 1.5 inches. 100%, 2 3/4. Now I kind of like that it's 1.5 inch. If it gets down to 1 inch for 80%, that's pretty good just for using your eyes, you would have to say, at 25 yards. Like I said, the limitations of this pistol are your eyes. If you scope this pistol, it's extremely accurate, but I'm going to have to tell you some things about scoping it because you can damage the barrel if you don't do it the right way. So anyway, there's that at 25 yards, 7.33 grain round nose Falcon, Air Arms Falcon pellet. You can find these pellets on most websites that sell pellets, like Pyramid Air and Home Depot, Air Gun Depot, stuff like that. Now this next pellet I was looking into, I thought this was pretty cool. This 9.57 grain, 80% of the shots were 1.5 inches. And what I really liked about the fact is that right in here, just a little bit bigger than 1/4. So I'm going to give these pellets another chance at longer ranges. I haven't done it yet, but here's the 9.57 grain Phoenix pellet. It's called a Coal Phoenix, and what they've done is most round nose pellets that are heavier weight like this, typically what they do is they balance the weight from the head to the skirt, whereas Phoenix, what they do is they put most of the weight towards the front. So it's kind of like a dart in a way, you know, like them yard darts that you throw that have a heavy front on them, that kind of thing. So I could use that for an example just to tell you how these things work. But basically, you got more weight in the front of the nose here, and it's supposed to cause some good stability at longer ranges. And here we are at 40 yards, or not 40 yards, but 25 yards, and it seems to be pretty good for an 899 500 count pellet tin here. So I'm going to give these another try at longer ranges because they're $8.99 for 500, whereas some of my other pellets are $16.99 and $14.99 for 500. So there's the Coal Phoenix pellets. These also have an extremely high ballistic coefficient. When I tested them and stuff like that, it's way over 0.025 for sure for its ballistic coefficient. But anyway, right here, this is the 10.5 grain. This is your Crossman round nose pellet. Your guys' heavy Crossman pellets, 3.5 inch groups there. And 80% of these would put us about maybe 2.5 or something like that. Maybe a little more. And then we got the 7.87 grain round nose. 80% of them was within 1 inch. And these kind of really impress me because 80% of them are right here. And if you look at my thumb here, well, you guys know how far across 1 inch is, but most of them went right in there except for 2 of them. So 80% is 1 inch. And if you took all of them, let me see my ruler here. If you took all of them, you're looking at, let's say about 2 inches. And once again, you're using just your eyes. You're using just your eyes and your aim point, which is this right here. One of the reasons why you use a big aim point like this is because for reference, so that you can mate up the front post on the pistol with this black square right here. If you use a round one, you don't have as much reference, so you'll get more accurate shots if you make a black square like this at 25 yards. And you can also use this to sight in the pistol. Now, if I was sighting in this pistol for 25 yards, I would aim at the bottom of the black tape and hope that all the shots fall right about there in the center of that group right there. So if the cluster's right here, then we're zeroed in perfectly for 25 yards if we want to take shots at 1 inch targets, which I can barely see. I can see them, but I can barely see 1 inch targets if I have 1 inch targets to shoot at. So, but that would be the way you would sight this in, is you would sight it in by using at least 5 to 10 shots, and then working with your windage and elevation turrets on the pistol to adjust that. Okay, so the next one we have here. Okay, so what I did is I took the 787 grain Air Arms pellet, and I decided to go out at 40 yards with it. But before I show you the 40-yard results, I want to show you the these beam and wad cutters here. These are great pellets. They do have some limitations, but they're great for general plinking and stuff like that, and they can be quite accurate for short-term shooting and stuff like that. But here's what they look like. They're kind of graphite coated. So graphite is good for that barrel, so it's not a bad thing. So if your barrel is a little black, it's not from the lead, it's from the graphite. So, but anyway, we got this group here. This is 3 inches at 25 yards, and what I decided to do is fire 25 shots. So you could see 3 inches across, and the average pop can is about 2.5 inches across. So what that means here is that at 25 yards, the Daisy 717 with these penny pellets, because they're only a penny, they're $5 for 500, you can expect to hit that can every single time, pretty much. All right, so there's a 25 shot group right there. So now we're moving on to 40 yards, and the pellet that I'm talking about for 40 yards that I decided to run more tests on is the Air Arm 7.87 grain. This is a 7.87 grain round nose, and this one here is very similar, or exactly the same as the JSB. And the difference between the Falcons and these is the Falcons, if you look at the back part of the skirt, it's more narrow of a hole. Or no, just the opposite. This one's more narrow of a hole. There's a wider hole in the Air Arms 7.33. So that's the difference between the Air Arms 7.33 and this one, which is a 7.87 grain. But these are great pellets. These are some of my best pellets I've used in all my low velocity air rifles so far. These are very hard to beat. $14.99 for 500. And as I was telling you before, these Colt Phoenix are $8.99 for 500. I want to give these another chance because the lower price. These seem to be doing very, very well. Okay, so here we got 40 yards, and what I did is let's see how many sets of 10 I did. I did 6 sets of 10 just to find some consistency here. And at 40 yards, once again, there's human error involved here because of the fact that, number one, I'm just using factory sights. Number two, the velocity starts to get lower when you get out to 40 yards. And you know, there's a lot of variables that come to play with low velocity air guns at longer ranges. So there's a limit to how far you can push a pellet, even with a great rifled barrel, to the point where, you know, it loses its velocity and then it loses its spin and it starts to tumble and do things like that. Although these didn't tumble, they did fairly well. So here's all my groups right here. So I did six sets of 10, and the one that I had my eye on obviously was this one here, 3 1/4 inch groups total right here. But if you look carefully, you'll notice that had I just taken 5 or 10 shots, the groups would be smaller. And right here too, that's within 1.5 inches right there. But I believe in a 10-shot grouping, so I decided to stick with that because I want to know what is 10 shots going to do reliably, even with human error, with me not having the sights where I'm supposed to. My eyesight isn't the best either. I do not have 20/20 vision in both eyes. Both of my eyes have a type of vision that isn't the best. So some of you guys shooting at 40 yards, if you want to try a 10-shot group at 40 yards with the 717 with a pellet, doing at least a few sets of 10, show me your results and what kind of pellet you're using. Although all rifled barrels are different, sometimes you can find some good pellets that work in all the pistols, even though each barrel is a little bit different from the other, because of the unique rifling that's in it and stuff like that. Now this one's a standard rifled barrel, so the other thing you want to have with these pistols is you want to have some kind of screwdrivers like these to adjust the windage and the elevation. It's real hard to see the windage and elevation because the notches are small, so what you do is go get you a pair of reading glasses here. These are plus 250 reading glasses, and if you get these glasses, you'll be able to see the notches in your front and rear sights here. So right here is your windage, and obviously up here is your elevation. And you can see I've got this set for 40 yards because it's almost maxed out right there. So what I do is I jot down on a piece of paper these hash marks, and then I put an X by the hash marks on the piece of paper so I know how to adjust my pistol for different distances. So once again, at this distance, your eyesight, human error basically, maxing out the elevation and low velocity all have something to play in the accuracy you're going to get with this thing. There's really no limits to the accuracy of this other than your human eyes. Now, if you wanted to put a scope on here, what some people try to do is they try to use these Crossman ones, and that's all fine and dandy for a dot sight or scope or something, but the thing I have to let you know is when you start torquing on them things, if you look at the barrel on the 717 here, I haven't put a scope or anything on here yet. The mounts that you see there are from my Crossman 1377. But I haven't put anything on here one time yet because of the fact that if you look at the barrel there, you know, that barrel could move if you torque down on these mounts. So what you risk doing is you risk bending the barrel upward in the upward position. So most 717s and 747s you'll find, sometimes you'll find a little gap in there because I think they weld the barrels together in the front, and sometimes they have a little crack in there in the back, but it's hard to tell. But sometimes a little oil gets in there and it kind of blocks everything off too, so that might be it too. But if you put it up to the light here, you can see it is sealed, so from the factory. And so that's one thing you have to be careful of is, yes, you could put on a scope or something like that with these Crossman mounts, but you want to make sure you don't torque down on them too much, because what it does is, what these do is they pull the barrel upward in an upward position, so you're actually bending the barrel. So if you guys want to do that, you can, but as for me, I like just keeping the factory sights. So getting the skill on the factory sights is something really good to do, because using a scope is one thing, but you still need to practice your regular factory sights on any rifle or pistol. If you look right here, you see 3 1/4 inch groups at 40 yards. If you notice, 2.5 inches across is about the width of a pop can. And if you took a pop can, for instance, which is 2.5 by 4, let me see my ruler here. Okay, so 2.5 is right there, and then 4 up, the height of the pop can. You're going to hit the pop can every single time at 40 yards, which is simply amazing for 40 yards for just a pistol, an air pistol, so with just factory sights. So I plan on doing some more 40-yard shots for you guys. This is a 7.87 grain, but who knows? You know, my R10s, I used to do 3-shot groups at 40 yards with them, and I was getting a little bit under an inch. But when I do the 10-shot group, I'll have to find out if I can beat the 3 1/4 inch group there. Also, what I'm not showing on this video is the wind that I was experiencing out there when I was shooting these two. I did have some gusts of wind up to 20-25 miles an hour. So that might have affected some of the shots, but usually I wait sometimes until just before the sun goes down when there's hardly any wind, and sometimes I'll shoot some 40-yard shots. So I'm going to probably keep you updated on this. So let's settle at 3 1/4 inches for 10 shots at 40 yards, and let's see if I can beat that with either the same pellet, another pellet, or whatever, and just keep doing research on 40-yard shots and see if we can get that quite a bit smaller. All right, so here's these sheets here. Now I'm going to leave a few links in the description to tell you more about the Daisy 717 and the Daisy 747. I have been shooting these pistols since about 1987, somewhere around there, so I've always had one, so I've got a lot of years experience with this thing. And I found that some of the even cheaper pellets it shoots very well, because both the 717 and the 747, although the barrels are different, one's Lothar Walther, the 747, a nice Lothar Walther barrel. This is a standard grade barrel, but sometimes I can dual these two things and have my own competition between both pistols. And sometimes the 717 will win, and sometimes the 747 will win. Now the 747 is, it's got a tighter barrel because it's meant for match grade wad cutters, whereas this one, the barrel isn't as tight. So when you shoot the pellet, you don't really see the deep cut lands and grooves on the end of the pellet like you would for the 747, because 747 really cuts deep into the grooves because that one's specifically made for match grade wad cutters. Now this one here, the 717, you could call this kind of like an all-purpose target pistol, which means you can shoot even some of the heavier round nose pellets and stuff like that, whereas you'll have trouble with the 747 because when you push the pellet into the breech, some of them Barracuda pellets and stuff like that can get really tight in some of these 747s. So the 717 has a little more looseness in the barrel so that you can fit, all the other types of pellets in it. So, and this one here is a single stage trigger. It's a 3-pound. The 747 can be adjusted from 1 to 3 pounds, I believe. I've got it set down to 1 pound, the 747. This one I got set at 3 pounds. So, and the reason why it's set at 3 pounds is you can't adjust it. So, the 747 is got a 1 pound on it, a 1 pound setting that I set myself for that. Even with 3 pounds versus 1 pound, I can tell you from experience, sometimes there isn't a difference in accuracy with triggers sometimes. It depends. A lot of pistols, the trigger pull, it really depends on a lot of other variables for accuracy. It's not just the trigger. So the lighter trigger pull doesn't always mean more accuracy because a 3-pound trigger pull is just fine. A nice and crisp little break there. Hardly touch it and it goes off at 3 pounds. Of course, 1 pound is really, really easy to trip also, but the difference between a 3-pound trigger and a 1-pound trigger, I find sometimes is minimal if you have a lot of experience with other triggers in air guns that are up to like 12 pounds and even heavier, like I do, because I shoot a lot of air pistols. And I always try to shoot the ones that are most difficult because I love the challenge. So, but anyway, yeah, here's the 717, and it's a great target pistol. Once you adjust your sights on these things, you want to make sure you don't bump them around or anything if you got it set for 40 or 25 yards. This rear sight can move on you and stuff like that. So, but anyway, yeah, here's the 717. These go for about, I'd say about $160, whereas the 747s go for about $2. So it is really worth it if you take care of it. Typically what I do with this shooting session is I use 1 drop of 20 weight oil. 30 weight, for instance, is a little bit thicker, but I find that 20 weight works just as good. So 20 weight works really good, and you're less likely to gum stuff up with 20 weight oil than you are with 30. But that's over a long period of time, though. So I use 1 drop of that non-detergent, like they say, oil, and I've been doing it that way since 1987, so haven't had any blowouts or anything. The pistols that I had in the past that were the 717s, I pretty much gave to somebody or lost track of or something like that, or traded in for something. So, but anyway, yeah, I've been doing it the same thing all them years, And for cleaning the barrel, you want to make sure you pay attention to not mark up that crown on the end of the barrel. So you want to make sure no metal touches that crown of the barrel so you don't mess up your accuracy. But it doesn't need an aggressive cleaning like some people think. You don't dump a bunch of corrosives down that barrel. You're just cleaning metal. You're not doing a scrub job or anything like that. So it's real simple, real basic. And then at the end, you might want to run just a patch, an oiled patch through it in the end, but there's also oil for every shot when you shoot a pellet too. So you have to remember that there's oil constantly being pushed down the barrel. That 20 weight oil or that 30 weight, whatever you're using, is being pushed down the barrel too. So you're getting plenty of lubrication on the lands and grooves anyway. So you don't have to be aggressive with corrosives and stuff. You don't want to eat away the lands and the grooves with this toxic stuff that just burns right through metal. You don't want to do that because of the fact that you can actually destroy your accuracy with these. If you over clean them, you can destroy the accuracy. I don't use any harsh chemicals at all for cleaning. Sometimes I'll use mineral spirits down the barrel. I'll take a patch and I'll take a nylon scrub brush and that's it. And then I'll go back over it with some dry patches, and then finally one patch or two of a light lubrication is fine on the rifled barrel. So the problem these days with people with any kind of rifle or pistol, doesn't matter what kind it is, some people over clean and they scrub too hard, and they're not careful with that crown on the end here. You don't want to touch anything on that crown. If you chip that crown or something, you're going to have to re-crown it. So that's one of the most important things about the accuracy of these pistols, is that crown right there. So you want to be aware of that. So anyway, yeah, less is more. So you don't want to aggressively clean these things. You lightly clean them, you lightly oil them, and they'll be fine. It needs lubrication. It doesn't need to be over lubricated, but one drop wouldn't hurt for each session that you're taking, just to keep that pad lubricated in there. It does have a felt pad, so it does hold oil, so that helps a lot. So, and then also in the manual, you guys will find that when you open this lever here, you can adjust it, because what you need to do every once in a while is you need to adjust it so that when it's closed, you have a gap like about that big right there. And I forget what it is. I think it's 1.5 inches in the manual or something like that. Let me get my ruler here and find out what this is now. Okay, so this one, yeah, this one's about, let me see here. I think this one's about 1.5 or something like that. Anyway, in the manual, it'll tell you what you're supposed to adjust it for. And the reason why you have to adjust this is because you're going to have low velocity. You know, if you don't have the right, when the piston goes forward, you have to have compression to get the higher velocity. You know, for the 7-grain pellet, you're looking at about 385 to 400 feet per second. So the reason why they put the adjuster in there is so you can adjust it so that you can get that compression piston back up in there, where it's supposed to be, to get the proper compression. So looking from here, I think I'm about 1.5 inches or something like that. But anyway, I do check it. I do check it from time to time to make sure it's right. And it does come with an adjustment tool. Let me see if I can open it up here. Yeah, the adjustment tool, you turn it right there so that this either goes forward or backward depending on how it's going to close. So like I said, when you close this, you have to have some kind of a gap. In the instructions, it tells you what kind of gap it is. I'm not sure if it's 1.5 inch or what, but I have to double check myself, because even I forget that I have to adjust this once in a while. So this part here turns, and there's a screw in there. So that's how you adjust it. So if you're starting to notice lower velocities, you want to adjust this so that you can get back up. And a lot of times you'll find the clearance, you know, it'll get wider as you use the pistol over time. It gets wider and wider. So you want to keep an eye. You want to keep an eye on that and adjust it when you need to. So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll leave some links to these in the description.